Hello all, thank you for joining me today. For those of you that are new to my channel, my name is Terry. I have been collecting pins since I was a teenager. Prior to last year, all of my collection was pretty much all cross pins, or what it was all cross pins, and primarily I would say mostly ballpoints and pencils, and maybe I think I have a multifunction pen and maybe a roller ball and one gel pen thrown in there, but primarily all of my collection was cross ballpoints and pencils. Last year I had a little time off from work dealing with a complicated wisdom tooth issue, and I was bored. At that time I would buy cross pens every 5 years or so, and then I would stop, and then I would go on a binge next 5 years. So I had some time on my hands. I haven't bought a cross pen in a while. Let me buy something. And fountain pens kept coming up in my search. And I was saying to myself, I'm not interested in a fountain pen. I have no interest at all in a fountain pen. But a nice cross fountain pen came up, and I was like, that is really pretty. Let me try that. So I bought the cross fountain pen, and I've been pretty much hooked since. And I started, it was spring of last year, then I started doing these pen videos not too long after. And it's been fun to produce these videos, and I have a lot of channels that I watch also. So it's been a fun experience, an educational experience. So this pen I have up today is the Opus 88 Demonstrator. I have had this pen for about, I would say, 3 weeks or so. I bought this from Pen Boutique. It was $120. This is the pen. As you can see, it's a demonstrator. It weighs about, with this ink in it, it's and capped, it's 29.8 grams. And uncapped is 19.6. So although it's fairly long and bulky, it's a pretty lightweight pen. It's made of resin, and you can see there some of it is see-through, and you can see the threads, and then some of it's opaque, and I like that contrast in the opaque and the clear resin. The nib on it is a Yovo number 6, and for this one it's a fine flex. You can see the nib is pretty plain. It just says Opus 88. And there's the feed. And the good thing about the nib is that you can buy extra nibs. Pen Boutique had extra nibs. So for this model and the Omar, I believe, they both use the number 12 nib. And so I got a extra fine, an extra fine, just in case I didn't like this fine flex. Because sometimes with modern flex pens, for me, they can be a little hit or miss. So I decided to get the spare extra fine just in case. So you can see there the section is nice and opaque. And it is a eyedropper. And it uses, I think it takes 3.59 mils of ink. So it's a huge capacity, 3.56 mils it holds. And it has it looks like this is well, it is kind of a piston knob. But with this, it's not a traditional piston filler knob. It actually controls this. Down here there is a stop valve that lets you close off the ink supply to the nib. So if you're just writing for a short session, you can just close it, leave it closed. If you're writing for a long session, you can just open it up, and the ink flows a lot better when it's open. I've been writing with this quite a bit. This was pretty much full, but I've used quite a bit of the ink. The ink that I have in here is Otto Hutt Red Roses. It's a nice ink. It actually smells like red roses. So far, I've been pretty happy with this pen. No issues so far. You can see there on the cap, it says Opus 88, and there's a nice firm but usable clip. It's a metal clip. It's kind of a matte black finish. The top finial is pretty square. The pen itself is pretty square. So it's a clear top finial, totally squared off. And same with the bottom, the end finial. It's pretty squared off. Nice clear area here. And the one complaint that I had about this pen is that it was super squeaky initially, this piston knob. But I saw a video that Penultimate Dave did, and I'm not sure, I don't think it was a Demonstrator model, but another model that also uses the stop valve. And he was complaining that it's super squeaky, and it was. And so all I did, which is what he recommended, was to use some silicone grease on there and just work it back and forth. And in a few minutes, it was totally quiet. It was super annoying and squeaky initially. So the nibs come in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and 1.5 millimeter stub. The flex options are extra fine and fine. And for the extra nib, I paid, it was $20 for the extra nib. And I think I said this is a number 6 steel Yovo. The piston rod in there is made out of ebonite. This does not post. Doesn't even come close to posting. But it's a long enough pen that you don't really need to post it. And I'll put some of the measurements at the end of my video. But to quickly compare to some of the others that I have here, this one is closely resembles, in my collection at least, closely resembles this. And this is a Conklin All-American. Then we have the usual, the Lamy AL Star. We have a Twisby Vac, it's a Vac 700. And then we have a Metropolitan. And you can see here, it's pretty big. It's, as far as length, it's mostly comparable to the Twisby, and girth with the Conklin. But it's a pretty bulky pen. But like I said before, the weight is pretty minimal, so it's very comfortable to work with. And again, the clip, like I said, is very firm but usable. So I'll show you the box here. The outer box has a kind of a very tactile feeling material, almost rubbery. Feels good on the hand. So it just says Opus 88 Fine Writing Instruments, nothing else there. So Opus 88 is a Taiwanese company. So this pen was made in Taiwan, and just, although it says 88, they've been in business since 1977. Again, you can see here's Opus 88. It's a demo. It's a fine flex, made in Taiwan. It's just a hard cardboard box. Just some instructions on how to use the stop valve and how to fill it. It does come with this pipette, but I also, as far as filling it, I also use Penultimate Dave's advice to use a needle syringe. It works better. I would say it's cleaner because this has a kind of a big mouth on it, and with the piston rod in the way, and I can show you really quickly. The piston rod, to fill it, you just unscrew it at the section. And you have your O-ring there. And so the stop valve is just right there. So when you go to use this big mouth pipette, it actually is not, it works, but it's just a little cleaner because you can actually put, when you use a needle syringe, you can actually get it further in there. It's just neater and cleaner process when you use the syringe. So that's what the stop valve looks like, and the stop valve just closes off this area right here. And again, the stop valve is rubber, but the actual piston rod is made of ebonite. So it seals up pretty nicely, no issues with leaking. I'll open this up to let the ink flow for the writing sample. And again, that's it for the box. It's pretty simple. So I'm just gonna start with some writing samples and then talk about some pros and cons. And I'm also going to change the nib so we can see together how the extra fine looks. So pen we have is the Opus 88. This is the Demonstrator. They do have other models that are also Demonstrator models. They have the Omar, the Jazz, and there's the Colaro. The Colaro looks a bit like this, but it's mostly opaque. And they're all very nice looking pens. I really like the Colaro. I like the opaqueness of the Colaro. And the Jazz and the Omar, they look kind of like this, but they're a little bit more rounded in their finials and on the cap. And they all range from about $108 to $120. The nib in here is a fine flex. And it's a number 6 Yobo steel. And the ink, as I said, is Otto Hutt Red Roses. And it smells delightful. So this is the ink. I have a blue, the Otto Hutt Ocean Blue. I don't think it's supposed to smell, but it does have a nice smell to that as well. So that's what it looks like with a swab. Wish you could smell it. Keep that right there because I'm going to dip the other nib a little later. This is what it looks like in the pen. Very nice and dark. Nice rich ink with a lot of shading. And we'll flex it a little bit. So it's a nice springy nib. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Move this over. And I'm using Rhodia 80 GSM paper. Reverse, it's okay. It's a little light in reverse, but it's so-so. And again, this was $120. And that's pretty much the price at all of the retailers. It's $120. I haven't checked on eBay or anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this nib out. And we're going to try the extra fine. So you just unscrews. So I'm just unscrewing the nib And this is my extra. It came in this box, so you can see it's a number 12 extra fine. Kind of hard to do this with one hand. I don't want to spill any ink, so I'll edit my fumbling out. Alright, so I'm going to just screw this in, push it in, and then screw it. So, see there, this is the extra fine, the plain old extra fine. It's funny that the flex nib doesn't have any ornate engraving on it compared to the regular nib. I guess with the slits on the side, they didn't really want to take the time to put any engraving on it. So I may have to dip this. Until the ink starts to flow. I'm going to open this up a little bit. The ink flow down to the nib. So I'll use my left hand for this one. So this is a nice firm. You can definitely feel the difference in firmness. Demonstrator. And the nib is the extra fine, and it's still a Yovo number 6. And there's no flexing, no line weight variation, but it still has some nice shading. As far as reverse, it's not bad in reverse, not bad at all. It's actually, the extra fine is actually a little bit better. So this fine flex is, it almost feels like a medium to me. I may actually give the extra fine flex a try, but I'm liking this. Yeah, I'm liking the extra fine. I like the way this writes. The fine flex is just it's a little bit little heavy, a little bit too medium like for me, but all in all, yeah, I like this. So as far as pros and cons, I'll start with some cons. The cons, depending on your taste in pens, this may be a little bulky. It's bulky, and it's also very blocky and square. And if that's the case, like I said, the Omar and the Jazz are a lot more rounded in their finials. But this is a very square, girthy pen. It doesn't post, if that's important to you. And as I said before, this was very squeaky, but all it takes is, like I said, some silicone. I put silicone here. I also put it on the cap threads, as well as on those internal threads inside where the section removes. It can be messy to fill, but like I said, you can just use the syringe, the needle syringe, and that just makes it so much easier. The biggest con, I think, for a lot of people is the number of turns it takes. And I understand why Opus did this. You have 3.56 mils of ink in here, so you really want to make sure that it's not going to leak. But check out the number of turns. So there's 1, 2, 3, almost 4 turns. So, you know, when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm writing, and I switch pens quite often at work, and I just notice it takes a while. But I think I'd rather have that than to have a leakage. So far, I haven't had any, you know, real leakage in the cap from the nib or anything. It's been fairly clean. As far as pros, the section is very comfortable. And again, I do like the combination of the opaque and the clear resin. And it's nice to see the ink sloshing around. Especially, I really love the Otto Hutt, that red ink. I think it looks really nice in this pen. And it's very lightweight pen, despite its size. It's very comfortable to write with. The nib is very smooth. Both of these nibs are smooth. This, like I said, this feels like a medium. But this extra fine definitely feels like the normal extra fine. And it's nice to have the nib options. Like I said, it goes from extra fine all the way up to a 1.5 millimeter stub. And again, the flex options are just extra fine and fine. So that's a nice option as well. I think I would only, cause my favorite nibs are pretty much extra fine and fine. So I think for me, to get a extra fine flex is probably all I'll need to add to this. And I also like the idea of the stop valve. I think you can fly with this, if I'm not mistaken. I think the instruction said something about the stop valve enables you to fly with it. I've never flown with a fountain pen, so I don't really know, you know, if that's true or not. But yeah, all in all, I really have enjoyed this Opus 88. I bought this on a whim, seeing it at Pen Boutique, and Pen Boutique is probably about, I would say, 25 minutes from me. It's on my way from work, so I stop by there quite a bit and pick up things every now and then. So yeah, so that's a Opus 88 Demonstrator. So if you have any questions about this pen or any other pen that I've talked about, feel free to leave me a message in the comments, and also somewhere on my YouTube page, my email address is there. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you're all doing well. Take care.